It has been an exciting career with lots of many different opportunities along the way. I started as a dietary aide when I was going to university, and that really exposed me to working in the food service arena. I guess I probably started before that working as a server in a couple restaurants when I was 15 and short order cooking. So that was always my passion to really work with food. So starting as a dietary aide, and then while attending university, I continued to work in the summers. I had an opportunity to work at a hospital alongside a dietitian, which really inspired me to working in the arena of food and nutrition services. So along the way, having the opportunity to try many different things, I guess, working both in the clinical arena as a clinical dietitian, a food service manager at some long-term care organizations, having the opportunity to write articles, to working as a corporate dietitian alongside nutrition managers, cooks, chefs, and dietary aides, which certainly was a wonderful experience. And then working as a consultant in the last number of years, working with manufacturers, food companies, nursing home chains, retirement home chains. So it's really been a career that's given me many opportunities, but part of those opportunities came from actually grabbing every opportunity. And what I mean by grabbing, starting as a young person in the career, if there was a job, there's never a perfect job. I think you need to try different things and you see what your love and your passion is. So I think that's important for anybody working in the field of food and nutrition. So finding what your passion is, because if it's your passion, it doesn't seem like work. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great field to enter because working as a nutrition manager, in whether you work in a nursing home or retirement home in the hospital environment, there's many different aspects of your job on a daily basis, which keeps it exciting, right? So you're dealing with people, your staff, you're dealing with clients, your patients, your residents. You might be ordering food, your food costing, you're providing some nutrition recommendations. So I think it's an exciting role, or it offers a lot of diversity in your daily job. So you can never say you're bored, which I think is wonderful. When you start first thing in the morning till you leave at night, your day flies by with so many different things thrown your way as nutrition manager. So I think that, if you like routine and it may not be the job for you. I mean, there's still routine, but there's so many different avenues or tasks that you have to perform in a day that it keeps you on your toes. I think my advice to a new manager would be to always lead by example. As a nutrition manager, I think as a student, I think grabbing any opportunity, and the opportunity might be to volunteer, because you can learn a lot from different people. So going to different organizations, asking if you can, even volunteer a few hours a week, because you gain so much knowledge from actually being in the environment. And I did a lot of volunteer work even back when I first graduated to even today, because I learned from so many different people and so many different processes and procedures, that I think volunteering is really important. And ask a lot of questions. If you don't know, it's okay that you don't know, but ask a lot of questions as a student, as a new manager, all along your career, because that will increase your knowledge, and also it shows that you care, that you're interested, and that's really how you have more opportunities, I guess, in your career, by learning as much as you can from others. Indicated, because you have so many tasks and your day is so busy, the day can escape you. And some days you may feel a little frustrated because you had a long list of what you need to accomplish. But I think sometimes you need to be a little bit selfish of your time. I think it's important to plan out your day in terms of all the tasks that you absolutely need to accomplish. Sometimes it may be shutting your door for an hour and a half, or 2 hours in order to complete a task. Maybe it's putting a do not disturb sign on your door. That so will allow you the time to actually not be interrupted, because there's tons of interruptions working as a any type of manager, especially a nutrition manager in the food service department, because your office is always connected to the kitchen. So I think it's important to shut the door when you have some tasks that have to be completed. I think it's important to either come in early or stay late, because it's quieter first thing in the morning or quieter later in the day. So know what works best with your own personal schedule or your home life schedule. Can you come in early if if your partner can take care of the kids, or vice versa, because those chunks of the day you get a lot accomplished before the meal periods. So that is definitely advice that I would give to a new grad. There can be so many tasks that need to be done, and sometimes it seems like you're not able to get the job completed in the time frame, so the 8 hours or so. So the odd time you may have to bring work home with you. But the part to remember too is, if you have some flexibility in your work a day or work schedule, if your workplace is good to allow you to go to the dentist appointment, well, then perhaps, if you're bringing work home, or if you have a deadline. Sometimes over my career, I would try to plan that I'm going to be done at 5 p.m. because I had to go home to my kids or make dinner or take them to activities. If I absolutely had to get something done, I would still leave on time, make sure everything was prepared for the next day for my team, for meetings, etc. But if I had to bring something home, I would bring it home in order to accomplish it, in order to meet deadlines, right? Because work-life balance is important, but sometimes it does mean, not every day, but it does mean, once in a while having to bring something home, because you're not going to be interrupted. Because if you sometimes have a task that's an hour long, if you're interrupted nonstop in your office, from your food service team, it could take you 3 hours with all the interruptions. So know how you work best, and don't keep your door closed all day, but periods of the day, if you have things that need to be accomplished with no interruptions, you need to do that. That is a great question. I think working in the industry, um, certainly right now, has more challenges than ever. I think the challenges with the lack of staffing is something that's hitting the healthcare arena, and that will continue to be a factor. So we have to think about how we hire our food service team members, how we train them, how we retain them. So that's really important, because you don't want your everyday to be challenged with constantly hiring and training new people. That takes a lot of time as a nutrition manager. So I think it's really important that how you're hiring your team, how you're leading your team, and how you're retaining your team. I mean, there's some things you can't control. You may have turnover, but also you need to look at, what is your leadership style? Maybe it's the organization too. If you're paying competitively to what the market is, then that's not a factor. So staffing is certainly a concern. The other thing is, we're dealing with a lot more international team members that are coming to work in our workplace. So English is not their first language. So adapting how we train them with more visual aids. Even, for instance, at a home I was recently working at, we had international students from India, and they were not aware of even some of the common foods that we would serve to our residents. So they didn't know what brown toast was. They didn't know what jam was. So things that we take for granted, they may not even know how to serve a piece of toast, putting butter and jam. That's foreign to them. So we had to provide some education and training on when residents request something, this is what that means, this is how you serve it, right? So from the dietary aids to the PSW. So that's certainly something to think of, is how that they're familiar with our foods and our processes. So that's certainly one challenge, the staffing. The other challenge is obviously the rising cost of food is impacting our organizations, and looking at things like food waste. How are we, what are we doing with food waste? Like, that's certainly a concern. We can't afford to throw out food. We cannot afford to throw out the broccoli stock. So you're going to see, I think, more focus on sustainability in food services, from the products that we order to how we're dealing with our leftovers, how we're dealing with potato peels and broccoli pieces. So those are things that, how can we incorporate them into recipes? What do we do with leftovers when they come back? Do we have a special process to dry out those leftovers, or not dry them out, but there's a process to compost those leftovers. So that I see that. I also see there's going to be the advancement of technology in food services, so a lot more AI, from robots serving in the dining rooms to robots even preparing the foods in kitchens, or even having, I know I've been in conversations with some individuals who are actually preparing food with robots for healthcare institutions and sending it, much like Uber Eats. So it's sent to the organization, heated, heat and serve. So you're going to see more of that. And even commissaries where there's large amounts of food prepared and shipped to places like retirement homes, nursing homes, because of the lack of staffing and the cost of food. So it really produces a lot more efficiencies. I think it's important to recognize that we have a budget and we have to remain within that budget. And so when we're putting foods that are on the menu, you have to keep in mind, obviously, the cost of them, but also think of what your residents like. So if you're serving them something that is a outsourced product, I'll pick an example like a stuffed pepper. A stuffed pepper that's outsourced is a pricier product, tasty product, but what percentage of your residents actually like it, right? So if it's not something that's well received by many, or there's a large amount of food waste, looking at plate waste in the dining room, that cost of that product, is it something that is worthwhile to serve, or are you better to serve something like a less expensive cut of steak that people are going to eat 100%? So you're certainly not going to serve steak on your menu every week on a 3-week rotation menu. But if you offer it on Father's Day, or New Year's Eve, there's a way to incorporate some of their food requests, but not in a manner that you would serve it weekly, because you certainly you couldn't afford it. So looking at what the requests are and how can you incorporate it sometimes. And also, I mean, let's be honest, we can't serve fresh blueberries every day on our menus because of the cost, but can you serve frozen? I just saw an article the other day, frozen blueberries are 1/4 the cost to fresh blueberries. So could you serve frozen blueberries, once a week on your yogurt, for a yogurt parfait for breakfast? So looking at some of those things, talking to your clients and asking them and or their family members, can just explaining to them the reality that, we have X dollars a day to feed our clients. If it's something that you'd like to bring in for your mom, dad, certainly by all means, we can keep it here in our serveries and serve it to your dad every morning for breakfast. So looking at some of that, explaining that to clients, because many people don't understand what it's like to run a food service operation. So even having tours with your residents, your family members, caregivers through the kitchen, having once a year having an opportunity to showcase the food service department, talking about your menu, food costs, productions, giving them a tour. To both the clients, the residents, and the family members or caregivers, because they can see and have a better appreciation of all the things that you're trying to juggle. And so trying to juggle pasta every night for dinner for their dad is not a reality with everything you have to juggle. So I think trying to balance their needs with what you have to work with is important, but also talking to them about it. Just don't, shove it under the carpet, being honest, open, but then trying to incorporate some of those special foods in a different manner. So special, like a Sunday, for instance, serve a beautiful Sunday dinner with a pie. A piece of pie can be costly, right? So having one day that's a special items, or having themed events, or for instance, February 9th was National Pizza Day. Serve pizza, right? Or if it's National Blueberry Day, serve fresh blueberries, right? Because you certainly can't afford blueberries fresh every day. But those are things to incorporate some of their requests while trying to balance your costs. What I see now, and even over the years, but it was just mildly trickling in. You would have the odd resident who was, for instance, Muslim, and they didn't require no pork, or I'm just trying to think of like Italian. We even had Italian descent, and really they wanted pasta every day for part of their dinner meal. Otherwise, they wouldn't eat, and losing weight. So certainly, I think that was around, but just mildly. But now you're going to see a more culturally diverse clientele, which makes it more challenging for the food service department in order to really accommodate what you're going to serve, because as you know, the more items that you serve, it becomes more work. So I see it as having perhaps more ready-made products to that are more culturally diverse. So more like not a short order cook, but having items that you can heat and serve in the dining room for the culturally diverse population. I mean, looking at the population, I see that homes are starting to look at what's the percentage of your population, the largest percentage of the cultural groups within your organization. So whether they be patients, whether they be residents living in a retirement and nursing home. So you do sometimes see that it's split into three different cultures. And I know that from conversations and homes that I've worked with over the years, where they actually had a whole Chinese menu, and then they had a German menu at this one home that I was involved with in Toronto. So they had to produce meals to suit both cultural diversity within the home, because they were two large populations. So they actually had a chef that was Chinese to prepare the Chinese food for the Chinese resident, because it was a very large home. And then they also had another cook who produced the German food, because that was the other large denomination in the home. So that's very culturally diverse, but the food had to be prepared for the two large groups. So I certainly do see more and more recipes on menus being created. I myself actually create recipes as well for large quantity recipes for manufacturers. So I am producing more culturally diverse recipes for the different ethnic backgrounds to meet the needs of the populations, because they're requesting that, right? They're requesting the different dishes. So that's one part of it, incorporating, I see more of the culturally diverse recipes on menus to accommodate some of that. But there's more theme days as well, or special event days where you're celebrating Diwali, for instance, where all the food prepared that day would obviously meet that particular clientele, or Greek day, right, where you're respecting the Greek cuisine. So you do see a lot more of those theme days to accommodate those particular residents and celebrate their culture. So that certainly is incorporated in food service departments, homes, retirement homes, and nursing homes across the country. And I learned a lot from the chefs and the nutrition managers, who some of them were chefs as well, over the years. So working alongside of them in the kitchen, because I developed the menus for some corporate chains. So the cooks will always give you feedback, and the nutrition managers, if it's too much production, too little production, this doesn't look good together, this doesn't work together. So having some great feedback over the years, I learned a lot on foods and recipes and the equipment, having to train on equipment, purchase new equipment. So it certainly was a learning environment that I loved and was very passionate about, because I always felt residents had to have, it was important that they had great food. It didn't have to be bland food. People always used to think, oh, they're seniors, it had to be bland. No, my idea was that it had to be tasty with a lot of moisture, and it could have spice, but they don't, still to this day, don't love hot things, anything spicy, but they certainly like flavor. So I think that's important. I think students now today, it's exciting that they have the opportunity, because they can work as a chef or work as a dietary aide while they're attending class or doing programs like CHA to become a nutrition manager. I think that is an opportunity that perhaps maybe people didn't have years ago. So that certainly is a positive for many students. But I think the part that they have to remember is it's great to do, become certified and doing it online, but also gaining some actually practical experience. So whether it be through volunteering, or if you can get a paid job, even if it's part-time or one day a week, take that opportunity to learn as much as you can from different organizations. I'll tell you, when I graduated as a registered dietitian, there was no jobs. So I worked at a psychiatric hospital as a dietary aide. So for 6 months, what I learned as a dietary aide working full time, I learned a ton of things from a different lens, because now I was a registered dietitian, and observing even the behaviors of the dietary aides, how they did different things, because working in a pot wash room, lifting 20-30 pound pots all day, scrubbing, working on a belt line. So those are all things that you learn or gain experience from. So when you can lead by example with your chefs, your dietary aides, your nutrition managers, your PSWs in the dining room, always lead by example. And that would be my advice to all students, new graduates, anybody working in the field, because if you don't lead by example and show them how to do it, you don't gain as much respect. And I always told my staff, I only expect of you what I would give of myself. And they always respected me for that. They always said that I had high expectations, and sometimes they would grumble, oh, this is too hard, I don't want to do this, can't do this, they complain. But it always takes, and I would always tell them, it takes 3 weeks, 21 days before something becomes a habit. So in 21 days, we'll talk about the change that we implemented and to see how we can further improve it. But it does take time, and some people resist change. and especially they resist change in processes. So if you ask for their feedback in writing, it certainly changes perspectives. And then in 21 days, all that feedback in writing, we'll meet again as a group and review the process or the change that we implemented. And that was always really successful for me in all my roles and my leadership roles, that I would probably give to any new graduate student when I've had mentored dietetic interns along the way. I always told them those things. So hopefully it resonates in their minds. And I know certainly dietary aides and nutrition managers have told me years, we didn't always like you, Cherie, but in the end, you always had what was best interest for the residents, and they respected that, and that changed their views. And they, they performed at that level. So that was always exciting for me.